Welcome to Decoded, the podcast that decodes the design, technology, and experiences shaping our world and planet. I am Elisa Leñero.
And I'm Saima Ahmed Christensen. Together we explore the systems, behaviors, and technologies influencing how we live, work, and connect, from human interactions to the ecosystems we are part of.
Each episode is a conversation with technologists, designers, entrepreneurs, and everyday users. Join us. Hi, welcome back to the show. I am Elisa.
And I'm Saima.
And I'm a designer by training and currently rediscovering what design is in times where the world is challenged in many different ways, from the artificial intelligence revolution to deep societal changes and massive ecosystem destruction.
And I'm Saima Ahmed Christensen, a professor of design engineering and innovation, and also director of DigitLab, exploring design and digital technologies, currently at the University of Exeter. And we're diving into different questions of design in this podcast. But today we're really excited because we've got a guest who I've worked with previously at Royal College of Art, Clive Grenier. So welcome, Clive.
Lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you on. And Clive, you were head of service design when I was head of design products at Royal College of Art. But now you've done many other things, including advising and training organizations in service, digital and transformation of design through your company, Now or Next.
Also, you have a massive background and experience, so I will just keep it short. Clive has set up and led influential design teams for Barclays Bank, Cisco, Samsung, and telecoms company Orange. He started his career with innovation consultancy IDEO in the US and was co-founder and partner of design consultancy Tangerine, along with Apple design chief Sir Johnny Ive. He is an advisor to Bosch, trustee of the Design and Technology Association, chair of the DBA Design Effectiveness Award, and previously the Royal Society of Arts, RSA. You have a book that is called Redesigning Thinking, published in June 2025, which is quite fresh, and was nominated for the American Best Book and Goody Business Book Awards, and is available in audio form on Audible. Creative Review placed Clive in their top 50 and describe him as a passionate advocate for the transformational potential of design for some 3 decades. Today's focus on design's value in leading customer experience in the UK is, in large part, due to his work.
Amazing.
Where to start?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I believe any of that. I do have to very quickly mention that I co-founded Tangerine with Martin Derbyshire, and Johnny Ive joined us later. They're quite sensitive about that. So just to clarify.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can start with the word redesigning thinking. Design thinking has been out and about for a while. Most of us know design thinking, the process, the methodology, popularized by IDEO. And now we have the double diamond from the Design Council. We have different methodologies as well, where problem framing and solution framing includes divergent and convergent thinking. But what can you tell us about this new term, redesigning thinking? Is this a methodology, a way of thinking, a way to address design? And how does this evolve and coexist with what we already have?
Fine, fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you for that introduction. Redesigning thinking was a term that was given to me by somebody else. And when I heard it, I thought, that's really interesting for 2 reasons. First of all, it's a great pun. It's a great pun on design thinking. We're redesigning thinking rather than design thinking. And secondly, it's part of, I suppose, my mission to help people beyond the world of design, to help thinkers, policymakers, business leaders, managers understand that there's a lot in the way we think as a designer that is incredibly relevant and practical and helpful in making the kind of decisions that are made every day in government and business. And I suppose when I was a young designer, I began to realize that briefs that were given to me already had a lot of the solution in them. And as a designer, I was somewhat surfacing And for a long time, I ran a lecture called Lipstick on a Pig, because that's how it felt. We weren't getting to the fundamentals. So whilst I was at the service design course at the Royal College of Art, I invited the head of one of the organizations we were working with, the Big Issue magazine, the street sheet that those in London and other cities might be familiar with. It was John Bird, Lord Bird, a crossbencher in the House of Lords. He came along to see the work in progress show. He clearly, I'm not quite sure he knew what to expect. We found him a glass of red wine, and he was a lot happier, and he gave a very inspirational speech. And then he saw the work of the students, and there were two particular projects, his own work on the Big Issue. Post-COVID, how do we change that ability to gift to homeless people, and work the students had done on the probation system, prison probation system as you leave prison. And he was amazed. I think it's fair to say he hadn't expected design to mean that. He had been talking to me a lot about reinventing the way we create policy. And his version of this is that I asked him what would he redesign, and he said thinking. I remember that. I also remember him saying that it's not reinventing thinking, it's redesigning thinking. And at that point, the nascent idea that I was writing a book, I thought, that's the title. That's the title, because it spreads it much further. It's not design thinking, it's beyond that. And that is very much what the book is about. The book is a lot of examples and case studies and the theory of service design presented as something for everybody, presented as a set of tools where we can understand who we're designing for. We can bring our creativity once we understand the real problems, and we can deliver new, sometimes innovative, sometimes just simply working solutions in whatever context we are. And whether people are reading it or not who are beyond the world of design, I don't know. But it was great to get those two book nominations in the US around a business audience, because business and politics are the people I'm aiming at.
Now that's fascinating. So we've only had 2 episodes so far, and what we have talked about is 2 of the things that you've just touched on. One is the output of design is not always just a product, and it's not always a service. And the second thing is thinking about what design thinking is. So you've just touched on this idea of bringing design thinking to other areas where it's not recognized. So is the concept about reach? Is it about bringing those ideas? Because part of our thinking about this podcast was actually because we thought design has been started to be reduced. And people are beginning to think that it's just about form, it's just about UX. And the value of design into the probation system, the tax system, or products, or AI techniques is not recognized. Is that what you were thinking? Or is there a fundamental different type of thinking? Is it still design thinking?
I think it is still design thinking, if we want to call that. But I know that term is less desirable these days, partly through misuse by other people. But it absolutely is about expansion of the design methodology, if only because I think people make really poor decisions. There are big, especially in service design, which is where I've ended up in my design career. Services are complicated. We have to bring lots of different systems together, lots of different parts of an organization together. And it began to be apparent to me that people were designing services by accident, whether they're health services or fire and rescue services. I've worked in so many incredible different types of service over the last few years, but they tend to be people with very good intentions in their own little silos coming together, and you get a very accidental, not very flowing experience for the poor people who have to go through health service or any particular service. So I think it came from a feeling that we were not designing this very well, probably because we didn't even realize it needed designing. Perception of design is a massive problem, always has been. People, when I introduce myself as a designer, tend to think I'm the designer of fashion or gardens or furniture or something. I'm not. But I use all the same techniques. to
Yeah.
design services. So it's very, very much about expansion. I think design is a much more transferable skill, including to non-designers, and it's a really useful way of making better decisions. And you mentioned training, by the way. We are training non-designers with all the tools of design, and they are suddenly solving their own problems, creating, having more empathy for the people they're designing for, and simply making better decisions as a result.
Yeah. I think it's quite interesting what you mentioned, that perception of design has always been difficult. and of course, we're not going to solve the problem at the moment with a podcast, but for the younger audiences,
If
it's
only.
always, well, we don't know, right? We never know. But for the younger audiences, what is service design? Like, you mentioned that it touches on different areas. And again, we don't want to make it educational either, but just to give more
Yeah, of course.
language to people.
And a really great point and a really great question, because it is actually younger people. I spend a lot more time talking about design in schools now than I do in universities or master's students, because service design is sort of so obvious, and yet we forget we need to do it. It's exactly the same design processes, especially close to digital design. The order we might think about if we're designing an app or a website, but of course it's not just through the glass. It's not just through the glass of a telephone. It's about the whole system. And if we understand how people interact with a service, and then we think about how they even find it, time is very important. How do we design? How do you find something? How do you engage with it? How do you choose it? What's it like when you open the box? Can you use it easily? Can you use it more? And do you love it forever? There's this sort of time idea. And at each point in that journey, there might be products, there might be websites, there might be social media accounts advertising a service. But we need to coordinate it. We need to orchestrate it. Otherwise, it's very bumpy. It doesn't flow. And we get frustrated. And we all know the frustration of services. Everything from a mobile phone service to the health service, going to the doctors, buying our energy. These services are actually everywhere. And even tremendously useful services that have arrived quite recently, such as Lime bikes, for example, in the cities of London, they all fall over and we have to step over them. There's lots of bits in the journey that are rubbish. And
Yes.
so it all needs designing. It all needs designing. We don't just design a thing. We should use that exact same intellectual activity to coordinate and orchestrate with empathy for the people who have to go through this process, making it simple and usable. And I love telling this to children or young people in general, and reminding them that everything in the world is designed. The road signs are designed by Margaret Calvert from the Royal College of Art. The products are designed by Johnny Ive. Somebody puts a lot of thought into this, and we're just expanding that thought into some of the more systemic experiences we have. That's one way of explaining service design anyway, bringing the whole thing together.
And that's brilliant. And I mean, up and down our street, you see people walking with the app looking for the Lime bikes, which are hidden behind the streets in their house. So that whole user journey and people's behavior needs to be thought through. You mentioned digital tech a little bit there and the digital element. So I wonder if it's a good point to sort of pivot onto that. And digital technologies had a very large influence, not just in design, but across all sorts of sectors, with finance and everything from finance to public services. So we're seeing this digital transformation, and what we've seen in the last few years are this availability of generative and general AI tools that are not just influencing the sectors and industry, but are available for the everyday public. You can use ChatGPT. And I know something else that you've mentioned is the need for design skills. What does that look like post AI?
Gosh, that's a big question. So you touch on digital transformation, the impact it's had. I write a lot about how government digital services in the UK had such a really radical impact on citizens in society. So things got much simpler. One of the problems with service design is when it really works well, all the problems disappear, so you don't notice it. But a lot of things have got simpler and easier. And also people companies, organizations like digital because it makes things much cheaper and you have an incredible reach, especially now we all have devices you can access things on. And the other final part of that jigsaw is that we realized quite quickly that technology-minded people were not very good at designing software interfaces. You needed design skills to make it usable and accessible to everybody. So there was a nice sort of marriage there. We got technology, we got design. Nobody would design software without bringing in user experience designers, I don't think, or it would stand out a mile if they did. So now comes AI and everything's kind of a bit more invisible. And there's a whole load of what I call invisible enablers like AI and blockchain, and stuff goes on in the background. We haven't got any agency. There's a word I use a lot, which is affordance, which if anyone's read Don Norman's books, it's about identifying things and knowing that that's a button, and not something else. But in AI, that all kind of disappears. And I'm tremendously shocked and disappointed how the entire world thinks that AI is a chatbot. That's it. It's crazy. And I work with companies who said, yeah, it's AI now. Everyone's just going to type in a chatbot. And I thought, oh, for goodness sake, there's so many opportunities of using AI to support, perhaps even surprise occasionally, to create a completely new level of personalization and choice and agency around our interactions that is not being exploited. And we do need designers to come in and design these new interactions. And one of the problems with design is it doesn't happen unless somebody invites it into the party. And that's something I think we as designers do have to be a little bit more proactive about. We perhaps have to show how AI can, visualize how AI can really have a benign impact, be helpful. The flip side of this is that we are using AI in the conventional, if you like, service design processes to a huge degree now. We're training people to use it as they interview customers. It's not replacing customer interviews. It's instantly summarizing a huge amount of data and making it usable. It's turning into a pitch with the perfect video quote from an interview you've done in half an hour, not 3 weeks that it took before. And you can take that evidence to businesses and say, this is why you should be doing better. It can prototype concepts, storyboards. It's getting better. Sometimes it's terrible, but if you work at it, you can create some really compelling visualizations of new ideas that cut through into organizations, stakeholders, and leaders. Again, we've seen that training people to express their ideas, use AI to create really compelling proposition storyboards, adverts, you name it. They won't be the ones that are used, but they are so powerful in expressing an idea to the stakeholders, the leaders of an organization, the product managers, whoever it might be. And on and on and on, reducing bias, bringing in challenges to data, bringing challenges to your conceptual thinking, identifying where processes in a complicated system could be simplified to help you achieve your new service vision. So much sort of really positive integration into the process. But as I say, the actual outputs of AI are really tremendously disappointing right now, I think. We all know when it's AI, don't we? And maybe it'll get better. But I think we need a lot. The next design revolution is how to communicate, how to interact with AI in ways we haven't even thought of yet. And what's interesting is there might be, I think, the very final part of my book, actually, I talk about, and it was just before Johnny Ive was announced as being Sam Altman's chief designer for ChatGPT and OpenAI, and he's designing completely new ways of interacting. And that will be very interesting to see how that changes how designers think. Maybe use more of the senses rather than just visual. I don't know, but I think there's a huge opportunity ahead.
That was very interesting. Was it that bit's on the physical side and the interaction with the end users and the general public of the AI? What you mentioned in the beginning, you wouldn't think of technologists designing UX without bringing a UX experience designer in there. Some of the things that we're working on Digit Lab is on the use of data and AI for design. So actually we think that there does need to be rethinking of design methods and design thinking. And we've actually developed around this. So thinking the other way around, if you were the designer, could we move to a scenario where the designer could design with AI? Because what you've described there is very much a human AI partnership. It's not replacing the creative designers in that position, or that's how I hear it. From my perspective, I think there's new design skills and new thinking needed for the designers as well, because the technologists wouldn't do UX without an experienced designer there. But would we want to move to a place where the designers are knowledgeable about the technology, or would you see them bringing in AI experts together?
That's a really good question. I mean, I definitely come from the standpoint that we still need humans,
Yeah.
and that humans are bringing something that AI can't. I'd be really interested to see where you're taking that. Generally, in the world, when I was a product designer, I needed to know about injection molded plastics, but I wasn't going to design the tool.
Yeah.
And that knowledge helped me be good. In the digital world, the amount of technology I need to know is not that great. Working with data analysts in banks and places like that, it was a conversation about what data would we need and how to help them spot the patterns. It was that collaboration that seemed to work well. I think I'm coming from a position, perhaps a historic one, of the collaboration with AI is important. And I honestly don't yet know what AI could bring that would change the way we design. I think you could accuse me of being stuck in an old way of designing if you want. But it'd be interesting to see how AI can express something different and can allow us to do something different. And I honestly don't know what that is yet.
I think there's some opportunities when we look at how healthcare is designed in the UK.
Right.
Often they look at user journeys. So a person with lived experience, a patient or a carer's journey through that system.
Yeah.
And typically that's done with 7, 8, 9, 10 people. So if you want to have a more inclusive and diverse knowledge, you've immediately got data, big data and analytics that could
100%.
help support that. It doesn't replace it. But I see that as a real positive thing. That's just an example. So you could get to a phase where you have personas, which is often used representing a group.
Yes.
To represent more diverse people.
100%.
So that's that transition. And perhaps we're not there yet, but that's that transition that's exciting.
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. I do think bias can be taken out of design and our assumptions. Everything back to why I was doing redesigning thinking. The natural instinct of people to solutionize very quickly without understanding who they're designing for, without understanding the complexity of their heritage and background, etc., is why things go wrong. So I think I've definitely seen AI really improve our understanding of our own assumptions and bias, and also things like compliance. If you don't want to break rules, you want to stand, but still be creative within, let's say, financial regulation. I think AI is a very powerful tool to prevent you making messy mistakes, healthcare, post office systems, IT systems, etc.
Yeah, but I think, as you mentioned, in the end, it's a tool which it's biased, right? Like you mentioned the personas, the synthetic personas that are currently being used by different companies.
I don't like those.
Exactly. Okay.
No,
so then I was misinterpreting. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't like those. So basically what you were saying is the personas that have been created is by the designers, but then AI is crunching the data.
Yes, I think that's where it's more helpful, and it can bring in such a bigger database
Right.
to challenge your assumptions. But I've only seen bad things with synthetic personas, but I think it does have a role, but not that.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I've been dismayed by kind of data that has been around about the disciplines or what people are studying now, which is more AI, technology, digital skills, etc. But nowhere you can see design. So
No, exactly. Yeah.
What do you think about that? Because the question that Simon asked is more about what are the AI design skills that we need to have, which you mentioned, but at the same time is once this wave of AI has kind of settled, we will need designers. But right now, people are not seeing design as the companion that needs to be happening with AI.
100%. So the worst case, and it's happening more and more, is that people see AI as a replacement of design.
Yes.
And startups are saying, "Oh, I just get a website from AI," and there's this sort of, "It's good enough." Well, no, it isn't good enough, actually. So there's that side of it. But I think I mentioned it just then about design doesn't automatically get asked to the party, and it's always struck me there's always a bit of a delay. The Great Exhibition, lots of amazing inventions and products, not very much design. Design had to come in and take the Victorian legs off the machines and do something different with it and capitalize on the advantages of mass production that allowed for new forms, if I'm going way back in a very physical product design way. But we always seem to be a little bit behind. The first computers had black screens and flashing green digits. They were horrible. It took a while for a combination of design and entrepreneur to say, let's make it WYSIWYG, let's make it actually look like a piece of paper and make it look like something we can actually interact with. There's always a lag, and I think there's a lag in AI as well. And the trouble is AI is going so fast. But to be honest, I know companies who are jumping on this AI bandwagon, and I think they will fail and have to rejig. And when we start looking at, let's say, a chatbot at customer technology interface, so many opportunities for a different tone of voice, a different visual language. How do people still make decisions? How do they respond? Do they have to type in all the time? There's much faster or intuitive ways. There's still interaction language to be created, I think, that goes with AI. So in that sense, it's really exciting. And that's why I say we can't sit around twiddling our thumbs waiting for somebody to invite us. We have to start jumping into AI and showing people these are the opportunities. This is how design can make it better, make it fairer, give us more agency over invisible technology. These are the things that hit me straight away that we can do that will prevent people falling down gaps, being left out, it being inaccessible. It's not the answer to everything. Design will make it a million times better. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
Yeah, you mentioned also that designers have to be invited to the table, which I completely agree, which is a shame. With your experience and your background, probably you are already invited to a table, right? Like you made a name, which is incredible. What do you recommend to people that don't have that experience, that they want to create that experience to actually be invited to a table?
Oh, there's still a lot more parties I want to be invited to, let me tell you.
They can all invite us.
Well, I think again the way we talked about service design with the students at the RCA, we talked to them about initially facilitation. You find yourself in an organization, you are bringing together people who rarely talk to each other, who rarely have a vision of the customer they're designing for. We have some tools that can be quite easily identified as valuable to a lot of other people in an organization. And it's about presenting their value, facilitating those collaborative events inside an organization that make people think differently. If I think of the times I've managed to get my foot in the door, it's taking control of a meeting where everyone else was a technology genius or an expert in their topic, but they couldn't facilitate, they couldn't see the wood for the trees, they couldn't agree. Things become very political. And I think the skills we would teach designers were not just creativity and drawing. They were about empathy and about the ability to get very different people to collaborate. Now, you might not think you go to a design school or an art school to learn that, but you do, actually. And you learn leadership from within. You have to start taking leadership. I think sometimes it's a little bit of an act of faith. We've got some tools, we've got an approach that will create better results. And it absolutely always does, right? So it's having that confidence in yourself. Sometimes it's quite tough when students are introverted, let's say, but an introvert can, a quiet voice can be loud as well. But helping people express in a way that they're comfortable with and begin to integrate their thinking into an organization with lots of different people. I think that's my advice. That's the way I've done it.
Right. You talk about empathy, which is quite
Mm.
interesting because that leads to our next question, which is we're all humans. We all talk about empathy. We strive for empathy. Most organizations pay external people, consultants, to bring more empathy or more innovation or more ideas into the companies. So considering human or users are human, not AI, like putting AI aside for a second and considering human users and empathy and all the words that some people might think that they're fluff, but actually they're quite important when we are designing. How do we get from service design to love? And that means project love. Can you tell us more about
Yes.
project love? What does that mean?
Thank you for introducing that concept. Project Love was a project I was commissioned by an American philanthropic organization called the FETSA organization, who had been exploring love. It's a dangerous word, love and design. Put those together. Oh, goodness.
Plus
No one knows.
empathy.
Yeah.
What?
Well, exactly, actually. And that's why when I was invited to meet with them, and they had been talking to philosophers and writers about love. And I just felt, yes, exactly. Design is an act of empathy. It is an act of, you have to care and you have to sort of love and you have to understand the people you're designing for to be successful and understand that they're not the same as you. So it felt like a good starting point. It was a very open exploratory project. Nobody knew what to expect. And of course, I think designers love that fuzziness. They love that vagary. They want to go in and create something tangible from an intangible start, which is what we did. And I brought together a team of about 16 designers, most of whom were recent graduates from the RCA service design course, some of the tutors, a couple of other people in different professions. And we created a huge range of tangible interventions to promote love. And we started off by defining what we meant by love, because I felt quite strongly that, the romance of love is dominating our perception of what we mean by love. But if we talk about our tolerance to each other, people who are different, if we talk about empathy to people we don't know, if we look at societal issues, and FETSA were very interested in solving big societal issues and how could we be more empathetic and tolerant and caring of people. So that felt a much more usable definition of love than, Taylor Swift or a Shakespeare sonnet, right? Or a bunch of flowers. Ritual is a very important part of it.
Ritual.
Having said that, ritual, yes. So the ritual of love is something I think we still want to work on. Anyway, we spent about a year. And it's about a year, just over a year and a quarter or so. We were at the London Design Festival, having had a private exhibition before that at the Royal Society of Arts, where we had these 16 prototyped ideas, including an AI. One of my favorites was Kind AI, that was an AI program that took your social media posts and your emails and gave you a kindness score and then tips how to get better. Right. So the AI was there. How could it not be? So was physical products like park benches to encourage people to talk and overcome loneliness. We had some really interesting projects around nature and how nature could help us contemplate and understand our role in the world. We were touching on some spiritual stuff. We had empathy hacks. We had my own project that was about how do you remember loved ones who've died and create a sort of secular mark that you would put in a place of beauty where you could spread people's ashes and do those, again, very ritualistic things and perhaps share with others who had also shared their ashes there. Once you get into it, there's so many fabulous human emotions that you can either encourage in a sort of alchemic way, perhaps catalyze. There are some things where you force love to happen, you provoke love. And there's some things where you perhaps shape people's understanding of love. We had projects around how to give and receive compliments, for example. So we're saying there is love there. Now, like all things, the funding stopped. We're trying to, it's not dead. it's going to come back. And right now, there are some students in the design school in Lucerne in Switzerland who are working on Project Love. I ran a project there last year, and 2 students are continuing that. A lot of work around how strangers react to each other. How can we help create the spaces? How can we design spaces where strangers can come together and overcome their prejudice? I'm working with a Mexican food scientist who has got a project called A Teaspoon of Love about how we cook and how we give love. And so it's, once you start looking for it, it's everywhere. But
Yeah.
I talked at the DMI conference last year in Amsterdam, and I've been around the world talking about love, and designers go crazy for it. And we need to get that balance between designers and non-designers, understanding what we're doing. But a lot of people, when they saw the exhibition, said, oh, that's what design is. So I thought, oh, that's quite good. We're defining love and design at the same time. And that actually seemed to work. So I am absolutely determined this year to run another cohort of designers, see if I can get some slightly more famous ones in to come and do some work.
Well, if you're
and then-
listening, now you
yes,
know.
yes, please. So hopefully some sort of output over the next 10 to 12 months, because I think we can design for love. That's what we proved. You can design things that encourage greater tolerance, that help people get on better, even in the conventional sense of love as well.
That's really exciting, and there's lots of really interesting ideas there. And the one you've talked about, the kindness on social media, what you mentioned previously about design and trying to get that into understanding, rethinking design thinking or redesigning thinking, as you said it, and bringing that thinking elsewhere. How would you get that idea? Because it's about behavioral change, isn't it? It's like encouraging people to behave better when they're on social media. So is there any sort of thoughts how these ideas, which are really exciting ideas, can be taken up and adopted?
Yes. I mean, the intention of all the projects we looked at was that they were repeatable, without copyright. Actually, we wanted people just to in fact, you can download stuff from our theprojectlove.com website. But of course, a lot of other things need to perhaps to be manufactured or placed, or they're interventions. Design, I think you're raising an interesting definition of design, an intervention that changes behavior.
Yeah.
I think that's not a bad definition of design. And we had many, many more ideas that I'd love to experiment with. The lovely thing about design is it allows you to experiment, to find out if they work, and then scale them up. We're slightly lacking on the scale up at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we need to, I need to have the time and resources, frankly, to show this work off and begin to have impact, perhaps with larger brands, perhaps with organizations, where we could just plant these seeds and you could see them beginning to have impact. There's 2 ways of designing for love. I think one is, you mentioned the social media. One is to kind of restrict use and ban bad words or things like that. But the other is to kind of promote better use. It's like the speed limiting sign that gives you a smile if you're within the right speed limit. You feel good about that. And I think that, for me, was the more interesting angle, rather than preventing bad things, but to encourage good things. And I think design can do that.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And that Project Love. So if you weren't part of the cohort and you weren't fortunate enough to have the time or place to be able to join that, would there be any messages that you would give to organizations who'd want to sort of bring that thinking to them?
Well, it is very much designed to be a seed. We're not a controlling organisation. We do have a charity called Designing for Love, but it's there to promote and share ideas. I think the answer, that's a really interesting question. I haven't been asked before, so I'm having to think about it.
Yeah,
but I
it's
think
quite hard, isn't it? The word love, connecting it to design, and somehow we want to. Because even empathy, we have that as a concept in design schools, but how many people in organizations have that? I'm not sure.
Well, the way we started was to say, what did love mean to us? And we started with, well, you need self-love, because as Aristotle said, how can you befriend anyone else if you haven't befriended yourself? And we started I was working with a wonderful philosopher writer who was Mark Vernon was bringing these fantastic sort of cross inspirations to us. So started with yourself, then moving to romantic love, 2 people, then looking at neighborhoods and communities. And I think when we've gone into workplaces, for example, and understanding what might love look like? What's the tiniest unit of love that might be a compliment or writing something on a board? Sometimes they're cheesy. We don't want cheesy. We want them to be received, given and received, not just performative. But I think going in and looking into your own organization and talking to each other about what makes you unhappy and what might make you happy.
Yeah.
What action would actually be receivable rather than embarrassing? What does it actually mean? Because it does mean something different in so many different contexts. And that's slightly the problem with scaling up. And it's quite difficult to find solutions that one size fits all. But I think actually we did do quite well in the works that we did. And just to repeat that, there is a website called www.theprojectlove.com. It's still there. I'm still paying for it. And
Please
you can
visit
see
it.
you can see the efforts we made. And it is about, we don't care. If you see something there you want to copy and rip off, or you think you want to think about something yourself, go do it. Go do it. Be nice if you told us. We'd quite like to be a vessel of all the ideas that are out there in the world. I think that's probably our only real function. Stimulate and record.
So you're sharing the love as well as making the
Absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly.
So probably that's a good time to start thinking about some of your really interesting messages. And so you've raised design value and redesigning. So the takeaways I've got is that design has a value beyond designing a product. And that could be in public services. And you've been fortunate enough to work with many organizations to help shift that. You've also talked about the idea of the lipstick on the pig, you said, right? So
Yes.
The idea that often you come with a solution and there's opportunities to think beyond that one solution and think about another way of thinking about the problem, to open that up, and design brings the process into that. And you've also talked about life with AI skills and that AI and human cooperation in there. And the last bit that we've just talked about is love, Project Love. And I'm hearing it's about empathy, but more than empathy, it's about identifying the love of all parts of stakeholders and almost moving to a world of what would that love look like in there. And I think it's really exciting to hear how you're working cross disciplines, bringing philosophers in with you and looking at that and sharing that in mechanisms of open design rather than thinking about commercial output, but sharing those principles beyond them. Would there be a particular takeaway from your side?
First of all, it's always fascinating when you talk to you. Your brain goes to a place it hadn't been to before. So that always happens as well. I think design is, I still use the word design, and I will not stop using the word design. Lots of people say to me, oh, don't use design. It gets in the way. It's everyone's right to have an opinion on design, to challenge the world around them. It's been designed, usually accidentally and badly. And for people, especially young people, to realize you can have agency on this world. You can actually be a designer and all its different meanings. And there's so many people who are actually designing the world, perhaps without even realizing it. By all means, study design, understand what we're talking about, but begin to expect and demand a little bit more agency in the world. Push back, be creative in your thinking. Don't just complain, imagine better and communicate that. And I think that's where I see design as an absolutely fundamental human activity. It's a verb that actually we all do. And all we're doing is trying to get it out of its compartmentalized perception into something that is there for everybody. And that would be my, I'm not going to achieve it in my lifetime. I realize that, but I'm going to have a damn good go.
We'll join you in that mission, Clive.
We will join
So
you.
thank you very much for your time. We've certainly learned a lot. So thank you very much. In the next show, we're very excited that we're going to have a focus on entrepreneurship, where we're going to bring together AI, technology, and innovation with Dr. Sam Bailey, who is of recent Dragon's Den fame. So thank you very much for today.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Really
for your
enjoyed
time,
it.
Clive.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know what you think, or if you have an idea for a future guest or topic, at www.decodedpodcast.com.
Don't forget to give us a rating wherever you listen. And follow us on TikTok and Instagram at decoded.podcast. See you!